So this is part 13, Innocence Lost. So after the video ends, James is alone, remorseful, and silent. James is beginning to confront his reality, right? Laura then enters the room asking James if he's found Mary. And, of course, James tells Laura that Mary's dead and that he killed her. However, this statement from James isn't so clear. Is this an admission or is this just guilt, right? So, James' confession to Laura is highly significant for two reasons. First, it symbolizes the loss of innocence. James is finally admitting to himself and his own inner child that he is seeking resolution. So by admitting this to Laura, this is symbolic for coming to terms or admitting it to the most vulnerable part of himself. This is what this conversation with Laura is about, is this James' most vulnerable part of himself opening up. This is highly significant. The fourth rung of the ladder, by the way, is conjunction. This step is ruled by the planet Venus, and its metal is copper. This step is the empowerment of the true self and the union of masculine and feminine. So finally, James has this conversation with Laura where she is, they're connecting, right? And he's telling her something really deep, and of course, he tells her, "I killed her, Laura. I'm sorry." It's very hard for James to admit to himself, right? And of course he does this through Laura, but Laura is, a aspect of his unconscious, of course. So Laura responds with denial and anger, which is perfectly normal. It's only after James admits this hard reality to himself through Laura that he can progress beyond this stage. He can start to move forward. Of course, immediately after his admission, he is beckoned deeper within his unconscious by the voice of Mary, guiding him to her, right? In the next scene, James listens to a recording of Mary's doctor. He and James discuss Mary's prognosis. While this cutscene is optional, it seems James may have found conscious evidence that cannot be denied. Right? Part 14, Death of the Child. During the next cutscene with Angela, is it any coincidence that she confuses James for her mama as James confuses Maria with Mary, right? Remember at the beginning of the game, they're both looking for someone. They're both looking for a feminine aspect, right? Angela blames herself for what happened to her simply because she is feeling intense shame, which is to say, the belief that one is inherently worthless and bad, as opposed to James, whom at this point in the story feels guilt, but guilt is a belief that one has done something bad, not that one is inherently bad and therefore unlovable and worthy of self-immolation or some form of suicide. Self-immolation, by the way, is lighting yourself on fire, burning yourself. So Angela's shame is deep-seated, just like what Eddie was grappling with, right? This aspect of James Sunderland's unconscious is the part of the anima that has this deep shame, right? She's only a projection of James' unconscious after all, but what James tells Angela next is how he reconciles and begins to heal this fragmented aspect of the anima, right? James refuses to give Angela the knife when she asks for it, right? And she asks him if he's saving the knife for himself, and James responds, "Me, no, I'd never kill myself." Right? So there's this separation, there's this reconciliation happening, right? By most accounts, James should be just as shameful as Angela for what he's done. And yet, James has grown and has already reconciled his shame and has begun healing. There's a theory in Silent Hill circles that claim that each character sees their own monsters. And yet, James makes a comment about the heat. By this statement, James is saying that he must leave and cannot wallow in Angela's shame any longer. This aspect of himself, James must leave behind and let burn away. Right? James tells Angela, it's hot as hell in here. Right? And Angela responds, for me, it's always like this. Angela's response confirms to James that she believes herself to be unworthy and deserving of self-immolation. By leaving Angela in this room, James allows this aspect of himself to burn away in order to progress further on his journey. The fifth rung on the alchemical ladder is fermentation, which is the death of the unstable child, resulting in further awakening. This step is ruled by the planet Mercury. James leaves the room and hence leaves this aspect of himself to burn away as he has reconciled this fragmented aspect of his anima.